Every family leaves its children with a private vocabulary. Some of it is obvious. Pet names, inside jokes, repeated warnings, the phrases that echo through kitchens and car rides. But the words that matter most are often not the ones the family intends to become permanent. They are the sentences spoken in moments of pressure, when the child is crying too hard, lying badly, failing publicly, disappointing you, or bringing you something that touches your own fear. Those are the moments when language stops being decorative and becomes instructional. Not instructional in the narrow sense of manners or consequences, instructional in the deepest sense. This is what your feelings are worth. This is what mistakes mean. This is how safe truth is. This is what happens to love when you are difficult. Long before children can analyze a family system, they are memorizing it through tone and repetition. That is why one sentence can stay alive in a person for 30 years. Sometimes, the unforgettable sentence is destructive. You're too sensitive. Don't start. Why are you always like this? You made me do this. I can't deal with you right now. Adults often defend these lines by pointing to context. They were stressed. The child was unreasonable. Money was tight. Work was hard. Nobody slept. All of that may be true. Children still build meaning from the sentence they heard, not the biography of the adult who spoke it. A parent says, "You're too sensitive," trying to restore order. The child hears, "The problem is not what happened. The problem is your reaction to it." A parent says, "Don't start," and the child hears, "Your pain arrives pre-rejected." These interpretations are not overreactions. They are the brain doing exactly what it is built to do, figuring out whether emotional reality can exist safely in relationship. Once a conclusion forms, the child starts living around it. But there are sentences that do the opposite. They do not eliminate conflict or remove limits. They simply prevent the child's distress from turning into identity poison. One of the strongest is this: "I'm here." Notice how spare it is. Parents sometimes believe useful language has to be sophisticated. Usually it has to be regulating. "I'm here" tells the child something essential before any teaching begins. Your feeling has not made me disappear. I have not turned into a wall. I have not outsourced this moment to punishment, mockery, or impatience. This is especially powerful during storms children themselves cannot explain. The toddler screaming over an impossible detail. The 9-year-old shaking after social exclusion. The teenager locked in their room, furious and ashamed at the same time. "I'm here" is not a solution. It is a stabilizing fact. Sometimes that is the most important thing a young nervous system can borrow. Another sentence children rarely forget is, "We can talk about this without tearing each other apart." Family conflict is inevitable. Emotional injury is not. Many children do not fear consequences nearly as much as they fear emotional annihilation. They fear that once a hard truth enters the room, the relationship will be swallowed by contempt, interrogation, sarcasm, coldness, or theatrical disappointment. "We can talk about this without tearing each other apart" resets the conditions of engagement. It tells the child that conflict will remain inside relationship rather than replacing it. This matters enormously for teenagers, who are developmentally supposed to test ideas, privacy, independence, and power. If every hard conversation feels like character assassination, they will stop bringing their minds home. If they believe disagreement can survive contact with love, they stay reachable much longer. There is also a sentence that protects a child from one of the most damaging distortions in family life. You are allowed to have a reaction. Not every reaction is wise. Not every behavior is acceptable, but a child who is repeatedly punished simply for having an emotional response learns to move through life divided from themselves. They become skilled at appearing calm while going numb, or smiling while accumulating resentment, or complying while quietly exiting the relationship. This sentence does not glorify volatility. It makes an adult distinction that children cannot make alone. Feelings are not actions. You can be furious and still not hit. You can be hurt and still not lie. You can be disappointed and still not destroy the room. When parents fail to separate the reaction from the behavior, the child often concludes that the only safe feeling is no feeling. That conclusion extracts a terrible price later. Then there is the sentence that transforms shame into reflection. Help me understand what was going on for you. Shame narrows a child's mind. It turns every mistake into evidence. Evidence they are difficult, careless, selfish, weak, dumb, dramatic, broken. Curiosity widens the frame. It allows context to enter. Maybe the child cheated because they were terrified of looking stupid. Maybe they lashed out because they had been humiliated all day and lacked the brakes to manage the final trigger. Maybe they lied because home has not felt like a safe place for flawed truth. Asking for understanding does not erase consequences. It restores causality. Children who are never asked about their internal process become adults who punish themselves without understanding themselves. Children who are asked with genuine steadiness start to build the ability to think about their behavior instead of merely collapsing under it. A sentence many parents resist, but almost every child needs, is this: you don't have to earn your way back to me. After conflict, children often become hypervigilant. Is the house normal? Is mum still cold? Is dad performing forgiveness but still keeping score? Is my best chance now to be helpful, funny, invisible, excellent? In too many homes, re-entry into warmth is conditional. The child has to perform enough remorse, enough compliance, enough charm, enough maturity to make the adults comfortable again. That is how families quietly teach transactional love. You don't have to earn your way back to me repairs that lesson. It says, accountability matters. Consequences may remain. Trust may need rebuilding, but belonging is not a prize handed out after emotional efficiency. Children raised with this difference become less manipulative, not more, because they are not managing the terrifying possibility of relational exile every time they fail. There is one more sentence that changes the emotional future of a family, and it is spoken by the parent after they have failed. That should not have happened, and I'm sorry. Not, I'm sorry you feel that way. Not, I'm sorry, but you pushed me. A clean apology. Adults underestimate how revolutionary this is because they confuse authority with self-protection. They imagine that admitting fault will weaken their position. In reality, defensiveness weakens it far more. Children can tolerate parental imperfection. What injures them is parental dishonesty about imperfection. A sincere apology teaches three essential things at once. First, harm can be named without the world ending. Second, power can remain loving while accepting responsibility. Third, rupture is not proof that the relationship was false. That lesson becomes a blueprint. Children who receive it tend to demand more honesty in the relationships they build later, and they offer more, too. What makes all this difficult is that in real time, parents are usually speaking from their own unfinished history. The sentence that rises first in you under pressure often belongs to someone else before it belonged to you. Maybe you were minimized, so you minimize. Maybe you were lectured, so you over-explain. Maybe emotion in your childhood home always meant danger, so your child's distress now feels like a threat rather than a signal. That is why parenting can feel less like teaching a child and more like meeting the parts of yourself that never got taught properly. If you do not examine that, your language will keep repeating old family law. And old family law is often brutal in its efficiency. Be easier. Be quieter. Be less. Don't make this hard. The work of becoming a wiser parent is often the work of refusing to let those inherited sentences keep writing the next generation. This is also why repair should not be postponed until some ideal version of the parent appears. Children do not need polished speeches. They need emotionally accurate interruptions to harmful patterns. Imagine your child breaks down because they lost a game. The old script says, "Stop acting like a baby." The new script might be, "Losing really stings when it matters to you. Let's get you steady." Imagine your teenager admits they hid something because they expected an explosion. The old script says, "How could you lie to me?" The new script begins, "I'm glad you're telling me now. We're going to deal with it, but we're not going to destroy each other doing it." Imagine you have already yelled. The old script says nothing and waits for time to bury the moment. The new script says, "You did not deserve that tone. I need to fix my part." None of this is sentimental. It is structural. It changes what the child expects from closeness. Eventually, children turn these experiences inward. A well-timed sentence from a parent becomes an internal sentence years later. "I'm here" becomes the adult's capacity to stay with themselves in panic. "Help me understand what was going on for you" becomes self-inquiry instead of self-attack. "You are allowed to have a reaction" becomes emotional permission without chaos. "You don't have to earn your way back to me" becomes the ability to recover from failure without total collapse. This is why language matters so much. It does not disappear when the moment ends. It becomes part of the machinery through which a person later organizes grief, intimacy, ambition, conflict, and self-respect. So if you want to know which sentence your child will never forget, do not look for the perfect line. Listen for the line that answers the hidden question underneath their behavior. Are you still with me when I'm hardest to be with? Am I still allowed to tell the truth when the truth is ugly? Do my feelings lose status when they inconvenience you? Can mistakes exist without turning me into a bad person? Can conflict happen without love becoming unstable? Your answers are already in the phrases you repeat. And if you want more conversations like this, subscribe. This channel is for people who understand that family life is built not only through big decisions, but through the repeated emotional habits that shape how children come to know themselves. And send this video to one person close to you, someone you want to build a healthier and more intelligent relationship with around the children you both care about. A better family often begins with a better sentence shared at the right time. Because children do not merely remember what you taught them to do, they remember what your voice taught them to believe about being human under pressure. They remember whether distress made them ridiculous or visible, whether honesty made them dangerous or brave, whether apology was weakness or wisdom, whether love shrank at the first sign of inconvenience or became more deliberate there. Those are the sentences that last. Those are the ones that keep speaking long after the room is quiet. It helps to remember that children are making meaning long before they can make argument. A 5-year-old cannot explain attachment theory, but they can feel the difference between a parent who becomes harsh when stressed and a parent who stays emotionally available while setting a limit. A 12-year-old may roll their eyes at everything, yet still absorb with painful accuracy whether home is a place where disappointment can be shown without humiliation. A 16-year-old may act detached, but the channel between parent and child is still being trained every time something hard is said. That is why parents who focus only on immediate obedience often miss the larger outcome. You can win the moment and lose the voice that lives on inside your child. Or you can handle the moment in a way that strengthens the voice they will one day use on themselves. There are families where the dominant sentence is some version of, "Don't be ridiculous." Those children often become adults who edit themselves before anyone else has a chance to. There are families where the dominant sentence is, "Talk to me, we can face it." Those children are not magically free from pain, but they are less likely to go underground with it. The difference shows up everywhere. In whether they ask for help when overwhelmed, in whether they tell the truth early or late, in whether they confuse intensity with danger, in whether they stay in relationships that require constant self-erasure because that feels familiar. The sentence becomes a culture. The culture becomes a character structure, and that structure follows them into every room they will ever enter. This is why even one new sentence, repeated consistently, can change the emotional weather of a home. Not because children need scripts recited at them, but because repetition builds expectation. If a parent often says, "I'm glad you told me," the child begins to anticipate less catastrophe around truth. If a parent regularly says, "Help me understand what was going on for you," the child begins to practice reflection instead of immediate defense. If a parent can say, "You don't have to earn your way back to me," then conflict stops threatening belonging in such absolute ways. These are not decorative improvements. They alter the child's risk calculation around honesty, closeness, and self-expression. In the long run, that may matter more than almost any one rule in the house. And for parents, there is an unexpected mercy here too. You do not need to erase every bad sentence from the past in order to become trustworthy in the future. Children are not asking for impossible perfection. They are asking for evidence that the relationship can tell the truth about itself. The repair sentence matters almost as much as the original one. "I wish I had handled that differently. I can see why that stayed with you. I want to be safer to talk to." Those lines do not rewrite history, but they prevent history from becoming fate. They tell the child, and later the adult child, that language in this family is allowed to mature. When that happens, the unforgettable sentence is no longer the one that shamed them. It becomes the one that finally made room for them. And that may be the greatest quiet power a parent has, to shape the voice a child will hear one day in solitude, and to make sure it sounds less like accusation and more like solid ground.